gentle
Physical
parenting.
punishment still works.
Hey! Sorry, that's not the house view.
Sorry.
Okay, yes,
Not-
yes.
not-
You triggered
not-
me. No, sorry. Trigger cannot anyhow use also. Very stressed these days. Maybe, yeah.
Order the Big Mac.
Yeah. McFlurry,
Oh, he was feeding his
Yeah,
addiction.
So welcome back to Wise and Shine. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut.
And I'm Dawn, SG Budget Babe. Today on set, we have a very special guest who is going to talk about... So we've been covering a lot of mental health topics on this show. And thanks to Mark, who came up with the idea of inviting an actual industry practitioner. Today we have...
So I'm Sandor. I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and I work in the private practice with Team Visions, and this is at Promises at Novena Medical Center.
And we also have another guest.
Hi,
Before we lose tangent.
I'm Mark, and I'm the founder and CEO of Rice Media and Blockhead. It's media publications based in Singapore.
Yeah, and today we are going to tackle the big and complex question of addiction, right? At the end, I think the goal is not to answer any one particular question, but to give you a little bit more clarity around what does it mean? You know, like, are you addicted to something? You know, like, how does it work for you? And is there a way to go about kind of like working through it? I'm not sure if solving it is a great way to put it, because I know got psychologists inside, right? When you have professionals, right, the term very important one, right? So all those things are important, right? Unpacking it, right? So we will work with the best in class information, right? So then we have a better discussion, right? But today's topic, we're essentially going to unpack this idea of addiction, right? And help you better understand, like, are you coping with something? Is something going on? And how do you go about living a fuller life, I think.
And this topic is important because two reasons. Number one, all of us here on set, we all admitted before this that we each have our own addiction. I think secondly, the pandemic has really caused some of us to develop addictions to things that are not always ideal.
Well, coping strategies that, either have become addictions or, or have the potential to blossom into an addiction.
Exactly.
Doomsday scrolling.
I'll confess first, like I'm addicted to chocolate. All my readers and followers know that. It's so bad that I gain weight very easily if I'm not watching and not careful about the chocolate that I eat. And then also I am addicted to social media to a certain extent. Like I can, remove myself from it when I want to. And dramas, right? Not necessarily Netflix, but basically watching a drama. I'm guilty of once I start, sometimes I cannot stop because, script writers are too good. The climax is like, you can't stop after that episode because you need to go on the next episode due to how the climax has ended. And then you end up watching another episode and then you hit another climax and you just never stop.
That's our work, right?
Yeah, I know, right? But
our goal is to keep you around.
Not always ideal,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And I'm conscious that this is an addiction, something that I need to work and manage.
Yeah.
I share already, so
So we
let's
must
all
share,
be
huh?
vulnerable.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, all must confess what's your
So-
addiction.
I mean, if you follow the show enough, you will know that I have stress eating problems, right? So because I will like Fei, so Fei, right? It's
I never noticed.
it's a ballooning thing, right? If you go and look at all the episodes, but stress eating is my way of coping, and I'm vividly conscious about it, and I can trace back to when I was in my childhood, right? In a situation where I wasn't allowed to really kind of like fight back whenever I was attacked, even at home. I cannot go out. It's like all the readily available methods of coping was kind of like taken away from me, at home. So then I discovered the fridge, right? So then it became like a bit by bit. So eventually, till date, whenever I'm very stressful, you will see me buy an ice cream. Right, it's very easy to tell one. If I start eating a lot of sugary stuff, right, then you can straight away ask me, hey, you very stressed, right? And I will tell you, yeah, even though I may not understand what I'm going through, I can vividly tell that this is a situation.
Well, I guess for me, it is, it's always been, I guess until a couple of years ago, it's always been like a nicotine addiction. I mean, I used to smoke quite heavily. Yeah. And then I quit. And I've quit a number of times for years at a stretch. It is one of the hardest things to stop. But I think that actually really took me the whole route, right? I've tried everything from freaking hypnotherapy to pills,
patches, everything.
patches, gums,
Gums.
all like crap lah. And then like at the end of the day, you just so it even came to a point where I rebelled against it. It's like like okay, I'm just going to smoke anywhere I want and then piss
Yeah, you just pissed me off.
piss
No,
people
no.
off. Yeah, so it's kind of like it's an interesting one because like at the end of the day, it is. If I'm being real with it, it is a drug addiction, right? But I think that there are a lot of misconceptions too, and I've done a lot of like kind of reading on this as well, like, because trying to understand what was actually really driving me, right? There's definitely the lifestyle factors where like you think that when you're stressed out, you need to go and smoke, but actually it doesn't really work out because it kind of increases your heart rate, makes you more stressed anyway. That doesn't make sense. Right? On any level.
Yeah, our psychologists here got reactions like, right.
Then at the same time also like but then again so then you unpack it when like okay, so then what's the difference between nicotine and caffeine, right? I mean, is a compound like, even though you see these ads kind of like, or what the media tells you, it's being demonized, like, oh, like, you get a nicotine addiction, right? But physiologically it's the same as caffeine, right? Drink coffee increases my heart rate. If I've got a heart issue or high blood pressure, then I shouldn't be drinking so much coffee. It's the same thing, right? I guess it's just the act of the mode of delivery, right? Like the lighting up of the cigarette ritual. That whole part of it was a psychological addiction.
I think also got a bit of medical base, right? Because if you have a nicotine addiction, your odds of lung cancer increases. But if you have a caffeine addiction, is there anything
That's not. I would
linked to-
actually disagree with that. That's actually not true. The thing about a nicotine addiction, right? What actually causes lung cancer is the tar in the cigarettes.
Yes.
The nicotine
Yeah, but
alone.
you have to get the nicotine from the cigarette, ma.
But if you chew nicotine gum or wear a nicotine patch, you get the same delivery, and that doesn't happen. So the nicotine alone doesn't cause cancer. It is the tar and all of the other kind of like carbon monoxide and crap that you're kind of like breathing.
Yeah, or you vape, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
If
All
it-
that
is it
that
a bit-
is also like that's another whole other,
Yeah, that's
other
a
thing.
whole another
We
kind
can-
of
we can get there
world, so
later,
we
but
can
then
get there later. Yes,
It was actually one of those things that it took me a while to deal with actually.
Yeah.
So what the professionals say?
Yeah.
No stress, no stress.
For me, what you want me to say in terms of
your addiction.
I noticed that I tend to go when I start something, I can be quite obsessive. And I think whether it is with sports, exercise, whether it is with alcohol, I did my studies overseas, so obviously that came options of the availability of drugs. All this was something which I had to go through. I would say that luckily I come from a very conservative family, so I wasn't exposed to it earlier on in my life. In some ways, I have to be grateful to my parents and and their parenting methods in terms of how they shielded me from early exposure and allow my brain to develop as untainted as long as possible before I eventually had these newer experiences.
So neutral. The words
I
coming
guess-
out so neutral.
I guess when if I'm understanding this correctly, it's like because we're more set in our ways as we're older already, so we're less impressionable.
Yeah.
Right? And it's harder to make the imprint, like kind of like
Yes, because our brain is still developing, and we know from research that our brain don't mature until age 25. So I mean, there are others who mature
At least we
early.
all stop developing.
No, there's actual research that says like the part of our brain that's responsible for decision making and rationalizing, all these only develop in our mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
It's the reason why as parents, every time I yell at my kid, I'm like, no, he's not capable yet. He's not in his 20s. Hold back. Yeah, it's one thing that I feel
So-
it gets preached a lot in gentle
physical
parenting.
punishment still works.
Hey! Sorry, that's not the house view. That's not the house view. Okay, I come from a very traumatic background as a result of that. Okay? That's not a house view.
Sorry.
Okay, yes,
Not-
yes.
not-
You triggered
not-
me. No, sorry. Trigger cannot anyhow use also. Very stress. These days, all of us cannot use. Okay, but okay, maybe yeah.
Order the Big Mac.
Yes. No. McFlurry.
Are you feeding his addiction?
McFlurry is not McFlurry.
McFlurry,
Okay, anyway.
Okay.
Can you help us lay out like what is an addiction? How do you define? What is the clinical definition of it?
I think the view that we can adopt is from the American Society of Addiction Medicine, ASAM, or ASAM. And basically they view it as a chronic condition, which is got to do with the brain's reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. So you can see that there are some identification of specific systems in our brain, which has been implicated in the process. And basically, what we see is that individuals lose control or are unable to sustain a period of abstinence, for example. And whether this is really tagged along with a substance, whether illicit substances or legal substances in nature. So there's the substance aspect of it, but this also can be attached to behaviors as well. So it's all encompassing.
Behavior, so neutral, right? So behavior, social
I
media.
love that definition because it makes
know.
so much sense, right? Whereby you're saying it is the chemical reaction that it triggers in your brain, but not just that, because you can get a chemical reaction from having good sex, right? But that doesn't mean you're addicted to sex, because like what you say, it's the abstinence. Are you able
You
to
cannot
abstain?
function without it.
It's not compulsive, right?
So it's both things, right?
Yeah, but then a best question about this, right? Then would you say that are all addictions kind of bad? So like, let's just say if I'm addicted to social media or like
Chocolate,
but it I eat it every day, but I can sustain the habit and there's no kind of like impact on my life, at least like what I can see, right? Why do I need to kind of deal with it, even though like it's like really yeah.
I think it's a very good point that you brought out about habits. Then the question would be, what's the difference between habit and addiction?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I know that there are a few sharings earlier about what someone might be addicted to, but I also do feel that we don't want to take addiction too lightly, because it is a serious degenerative condition that somebody experienced. And you also talked about a little bit about morality and how that's thrown in the picture and social norms and so on and so forth, what's deemed okay versus not okay. So I think it's a situation where, sure got contention one about
But
this
the
kind of
clinical psychologist, how do you differentiate between what's a habit and addiction? And so like Reggie's addiction or his habit of turning to McFlurry when he's stressed. My habit of turning to chocolate.
You made it so comical, but please, I love it. Continue.
Yeah, is that a habit or is that an addiction? He can't function without his McFlurry.
And
Cannot
it is
abstain, right?
Yes, and it becomes painful.
Yeah.
Okay, and there is a certain period of time where I even get headaches for not consuming enough sugar. Right? So I that's why I can vividly know the difference. And to me, I come from a layman. I'm a lay, okay. So don't judge me. I come from the lay person's view that I have been through that kind of episodes where I just cannot function without it. I get physical, manifestation. Right? I think that's the word, physical manifestation, where you feel pain in the brain. You just
withdrawal symptoms.
Withdrawal. The whole thing is withdrawal, and then you have to go back into it. But over time, I learned to phase out of the withdrawal, right? So I learned, I never go for a lot of these kind of things, but I learned that, okay, maybe instead of taking the like super crazily sugary shit, right, then I will slowly converge into fruit juice, and then I will start to do fruits, and then I fade out of it. So over time, after the cycle keep repeating enough, for blocks of months, right, then I learned to like self-solve.
Yes. But you still eat a McFlurry now.
Yeah, but I come in with a very different position. I come in with a clear clarity that this is a physical reaction. I know what's happening. So I have a third person's view at the top to tell me that I know what is happening. There is a problem here, right? So I use it as a physical reaction, as a physical signal to tell me that, hey, something bothering you lah. Take out your pen and paper. Right, but I will not stop myself from eating it because it gives me comfort now to continue to function, right? And I think that is a very high level of function, to get to that position, so that I know that I try to figure out what's the problem, what changed recently, and then if I can solve it, then this whole desire to eat sugar, right, just fades out.
But in this case, then how should we as normal individuals identify when what we have is just a habit or what we have is maybe an addiction that we need to go and get treatment for?
I really like how Reggie explained it earlier, because in some ways he talked about awareness, and actually the addictive process takes away the person's ability to be aware of things. You'll hear people say it's a mental fog, there's lacking of clarity, and actually a detox period. Whether it's a diet detox or alcohol detox, it brought about some clarity in their understanding of their behaviors. So I think what I would say goes into an addiction is where there's that compulsive nature of it, where it's, I don't know, it's just an emotional reaction. It's just, I feel compelled and sucked in and pulled in to do something, even though it's against my values, even though I know it brings negative consequences, even though I want to stop it, I can't. And then this is where I feel that, oh, somebody is really losing touch of themselves. They are not able to control their behavior. Sometimes I like to describe it in layman's terms, like the brain is just taking over, regardless of how the rest of the body feels, how your close one feels, how your value, is it in line or not? The brain just hijacks and just takes over. But one thing which I want to say that, I mean, if somebody is trying to address the addiction, just tell somebody to stop a habit and see how difficult it is.
No, that's actually really, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
Yeah.
but I think that one of the things that I think it's extremely dangerous, and because it's illegal, I mean, aside from smoking, right, it's alcohol. There's a real difference between, okay, let's just say people who drink, right, like not alcoholics, right? If they count the number of drink units you have on a monthly basis, right? It can be quite, like there's a BBC documentary on this, right? But it can be quite shocking, you know. Like let's just say I only drink once a week, but if it's a Friday and Saturday thing, right, and you go out with your friends, right, it's easily 5 or 6 units per night, right? And then I kind of extrapolate that over a month, right? It's like 20 or 30 units of alcohol every month, but you don't think that it's an addiction, right? So what I mean by this is that how the part to kind of, I guess, to have clarity on or to try and get, right, is that awareness of when a habit, right, is on its way to becoming an addiction. That part's always the most challenging part, lah. So like, you know, like for me, it was because one of the things that I developed during the pandemic, right, and this is where, like, you know, like, I guess a lead in from our previous convo about productivity and then remote working and then Zoom calls and everything, right, was that it was a lot easier for me to get away with, to deal with the afternoon crash, right? I'll have like a can of beer or like, you know, like a gin and tonic or something like that, right? And it will be an everyday thing, even though, like, you know, I stopped going out altogether. So like, you know, it was just 1 or 2 drinks during the day, right? So now, like, things are kind of like coming back to normal, right? It's quite difficult for me not to have an afternoon drink, you know. It is quite
Why
difficult.
you never chill?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that I can't deal about it, right? But then, like, let's just say if I'm not having any meetings and I am in my office or alone in my room, working from home, I can get away with it, what? There's no government, you know?
Bo Ting Hu, huh?
Yeah,
Direct
like-
translate. Huh?
Yes.
You know, so that to me is where it's like it's one of the things that has come up, like, and I suspect that I'm not the only one. Like when we look at what's happened during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what even though 7-Eleven closes at 10:30, right? It's open during the day. You can go on there and get it. Come back.
That's an interesting one.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying Wise and Shine so far. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and for us to continue to do this show so that you become a tad bit wiser every week, you gotta like, share, subscribe, help us beat the algorithm. But even more importantly, if you can, comment in the comment section below. Let us know your thoughts and also some questions that you would love us to answer. Yep, now back to the show.
So, you know, what are some common addictions that you have seen become get on the rise during the last few years because of the pandemic?
I think the drinking one definitely went up.
Really?
Yeah, because of the circuit breakers and stuff. In terms of drugs wise, we know that operations were kind of affected because of circuit breakers and stuff from CMB. So not sure how that impacted, but also because it's difficult to meet out, go out of home, wear masks and everything. So not too clear about how the drug scene was. But then the behavioral aspects really, I felt, would go up because now you don't have to be in the office and have to be mindful of whether somebody is seeing you open your WhatsApp or checking out your social media. Now you're at home, you're in between meetings, you're in the comfort of yourself and your family. And this could lead to a lot of opportunities for people to engage with activities which are confined to the home. I also do note that because of this circuit breaker measures, socializing was really taken out of the pictures in people's life. And so it left a void. So you need to fill it up. And I mean, you can't have physical socializing. Why not go digital socializing? So that could have filled up a void. I also do know of circuit breaker has been very stressful for people because everybody confined at home, everybody have to do their work.
It's true.
And that could be quite emotionally difficult for some individuals. And with more emotions, what do I need to help take my edge off my emotions and whether it's a behavior, whether it's a substance, who knows? That could be some person's way to cope.
How would you, like, you know, in terms of just social media behavioral addictions, let's say social media being one of them, right? Have you seen people with
Yeah.
and what is that? how does it manifest? Like, do they have to, I guess, if they don't go on Instagram, or if they get like 10 likes instead of 20, then they start crying.
Yeah, is there like a quantifiable measure where you
Hey,
get
you don't like that,
No,
we
but
talk about that serious topic.
No. I'm just trying to understand like when it becomes a problem. Like,
Yeah.
how do they come to you and say like, okay, look, I've got a problem now.
I think it's very hard, especially for those with those addictions which is not classified as a medical condition yet. And I also can understand from those who are deciding whether it makes a diagnosis or not, because you don't want to medicalize everything to chocolate, to social media, everything. Then don't touch anything.
Yeah.
So
Namaste.
Like a monk, I don't do anything.
yeah. So this is where I feel that I come from an opinion where anything and everything can be addictive. And anyone and everyone is at risk of addiction. And how do we decide that? Actually, I feel that it's hard for the individual to realize that for themselves, because addiction don't happen overnight. Probably it was a legit solution to their problems in the beginning. And then just like any wonder drug, for example, happy I can take, sad I also can take, sunny, rainy, any day I also can take. Then when there's more reasons to use it, then the regularity increase. And over time, it becomes maybe something which is the norm. And sometimes it goes to the extent where even if this brought upon negative consequences, I do not know how to stop because this is my normal. Sometimes the individual is not able to have that insight or that clarity because they have lost it along the way. And so sometimes we like to make sure that when we want to talk about addiction, at least how I try to do it is understand the addictive process, not necessarily talk about it as an addiction, because it can be quite, that's not me. That's too serious. It has gone too severe already. I'm not that. I'm definitely not that category. But
So what is this process?
This process, I feel, is losing the ability to make choices. For example,
many addictions, they start as a coping mechanism, right? So when does it go from just being a coping mechanism to, like you said, that addictive process before it then becomes an addiction?
So one way is to see how it has impacted somebody's life. So
is that only the person's life or the ones around them
I think
as well?
Initially would be both, I would feel. But
I feel like, I honestly feel like if someone is at that level of addiction, right, they got no bandwidth to care about people around.
yes.
If they're at the tail end,
At least that was where I was. I don't give about anybody around
okay, but
me.
we talk about the front end first.
Yeah.
that.
No, but from a technical perspective, from a medical definition, right, then the people in front are not addicted. They just have if you want to,
they're going through the addictive process.
You want to demedicalize it, right? You can say they're very intense coping mechanism. But they're not
actually
addicted.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go.
No, I was going to say that I think this is also maybe where the difficulty is, right? Because where you have very clear cut, like serious public health risks, Class A drugs, then there's a policy in place where it's like, prohibition, bam, don't do it, right? And the treatment after that is clear. So maybe you get caught, you go to jail, then after rehab, this is the Singapore way, right? But then when it's vague, right? Like, behavioral, hasn't really could actually kind of compound and might actually lead to other kinds of addictions down the road, right? The treatment, this is not regulated at the moment, right? Or there isn't a clear treatment process, right? Is that?
What do you mean by clear treatment process?
Like social media addiction, for instance.
How do you deal with
right?
something like that is kind of new?
I would like
is it effective?
I like to think of it as, in some ways, let me see whether this is helpful. I do see more similarities between passion and addiction in terms of how somebody engages with their substance or their activity of choice. I think the key difference between the passion and addiction is one adds value to life and one takes away value from life. The pursuit, the amount of time that you spend, and everything. I mean, it's very hard to differentiate.
That's actually a great perspective.
No, I mean, I get it, right? I mean, there's so many people addicted to the gym. I really think they're addicted to the gym. They cannot function without the gym. You feel a void when you don't go to the gym.
But it adds value to their life.
Yeah,
so it's not an
and I
addiction.
think exactly. So I think that's
you look good.
But that is based on social definition, right? Because what is the parameter of how you measure whether is it good or not, right? But we don't go there, right? But the idea is here, essentially, right? So in other words, we are saying that it's all a form of addiction, It's just that some being classified as an addiction have more negative, impact on your life, and that's why they are safely classified as an addiction. Whereas many other things that, on some level are very passionate, very addictive, and you are actually addicted by the definition of addiction. But, as a society, we do not consider them as an addiction.
I like the parameter though, because if you then think of, let's say, like being addicted to dramas, right? Watching dramas. Then if we qualify it in this way, if watching drama helps you to de-stress and relax at the end of the day, it adds value to your life, right? So it's not an addiction. But if you have to watch like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, whereby it now starts to eat into your sleep,
it affects your functioning.
Your
tomorrow,
relationships with other people,
it affects your ability to do household responsibilities.
Then
you're
that's
caring
when
for your
it's
kids.
a bit of an addiction.
Yeah, because something's got to give, right? And I think the key difference there, which I would like to point out, is that somebody who's truly on moving along this trajectory of addiction, they don't see that. They are not able to understand how much impact it has, negative impact in their life. And even if they wanted to stop, they can't. Whether it's because of withdrawals, whether it's craving.
It's complex.
Do you think we're good at dealing with addiction in Singapore? From like, a public policy level, or
We're
also
not a
even
public policy podcast.
no, not even. Okay, maybe not policy level, but just in general, do you think we are the measures in place? There's a whole group of people here who cannot quit. They know it's bad, right? What options do they have, right? In terms of just treatment, right? Like what I mean is that in some scenarios, I feel as if like it works. Like like we are treating addicts the right way here, right? But then in other types of addictions, right? I'm not sure whether we actually have the right policies in place or the right treatment plans in place to deal with it.
But ultimately, can it be? Because I feel that we have been talking a lot about addiction, but let's say we flip the coin and ask about what is recovery then. Because recovery, everybody talks about recovery, but recovery means a lot of different things to people. To be honest, I've been asking around what is recovery. Please define for me, and I haven't got a good answer. I myself can't define it per se, but I can recognize it. And maybe one way that I recognize things is when somebody starts to take their own responsibility to manage their own brain, for example, then because it's a brain condition, right? So it makes perfect sense, and it's a chronic condition too, characterized by relapses and remissions. So if somebody is understanding, like for example, somebody who has diabetes, same medical condition, and they take ownership of their own recovery in terms of what their diet should look like, how their medical adherence should look like, what kind of exercises they should be doing, then clearly this person with diabetes, for example, which we don't judge, right? We just see as it is, can either live a life which allows him to climb Mount Everest, as compared to somebody who has to visit the hospital very often. And I think in that light, I think it's easier to help people understand that there are policies that can be put in place, but probably is to safeguard people from this slippery slope that might happen. But ultimately, these safeguards will not work for somebody who's really at the end of the spectrum, because you can throw a huge levy for them for gambling, but it won't prevent them from going.